Hello everyone, welcome to Verbland. My name is April and today is Behavioral Interviewing 101. So, I am from the United States and I will be happy to meet some new people today. If you are a premium member or if you have a reservation, you can come and join now. How do I get a reservation? Good question. You can get a reservation by going to verblin.com and clicking on Get Reservation. You can invite friends. You can connect with Verblin. You can like Verblin, or you can watch the Verblin video. So those are some ways to get a reservation. So again, today's topic is interviewing. Interviewing can be very intimidating for a lot of us. So it's good to kind of have a class to discuss some of the ways to help you interview successfully. So let's see who we have so far. Miguel, how are you? Ways to get a reservation. Miguel,
Yes,
how
hello.
are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Great, great. Nice to have you. Where are you from, Miguel?
I'm from Colombia.
Colombia.
Yes,
Very nice. Very nice. Well, welcome. Have you been attending a lot of Verblin classes?
thank you.
Is this your first Verblin class or
Mm,
yes?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
my first time in this special.
Great, great. Well, great to have you. And Pablo, how are you? Pablo, are you there? Okay. Give him a moment. There's James in the chat. James, hi James. Hi Thiago. And hi Emra. Emra, I see that you say you have a problem with your microphone. Hopefully you can get that situated and you can come in a class. For Rester, how are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. How are you?
Great. Did I say your name correctly?
My name is Forrester.
Okay. Forrester. Where are you
Yes,
from?
I'm from Japan.
Japan.
Yes.
Very nice. A place I would like to visit.
Uh-huh.
Very cool. And Edgar, how are you? Edgar? Edgar? Okay, Edgar, I can't hear you very well at all. So if you can work on fixing your microphone, that'll be great. Juan, how are you? Okay, Juan, I cannot hear you either.
I'm fine. How are you?
Okay, there we go. I'm great. The only issue is that you are still pretty low. I can hear you now, but you're still very low. Still very low. Not really. It's very low. It's still low. So while you're working on that, Miguel Chavez, how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. And where are you from?
I'm from Nicaragua.
Where?
Nicaragua?
Okay. Oh, okay. Nicaragua. Okay. Great. Is this your first Verblin class or you've been attending some Verblin classes already?
Well, I've been attending a couple of classes before.
Okay, wonderful. Great. I hope your experience has been great so far. Raul? Is it Raul?
It's Raul.
Raul, there we go. How are you?
I'm good, and yourself?
Great. Wonderful. Where are you from, Raul?
I'm from Chile.
Okay, great. Do me a favor, Raul.
Yeah.
In this class, we like to keep it as a real classroom environment. So I don't. It seems like you may be laying down. So if you could sit up, that
Yes.
would be great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and Renee, how are you?
Hi, everybody.
Okay, and Renee, where are you from?
I'm from Margarita Island, Venezuela.
Okay, very nice. Welcome to the class.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have room for one other person. Actually, two other people. We have 7. If you want to come and join, Vivian, you put in the chat that there are too many guys. That means you should join, so that there's another girl. See, there we go. Wonderful. Vivian is coming in. Okay. And now we have room for one other person if anyone else wants to join. Great. I see someone joining. All right. So Viv is in the house. And James. Okay. Vivian, how are you today?
Hey, bro. How are you doing?
Good. Good to see you. So
New
Vivian,
earrings.
yes, yes. Yes, I love these too.
They're
Vivian,
great.
you and I are the only women, so we have to be strong, okay?
Yeah, I wasn't even gonna join because I think it's a difficult class, but I saw you alone here, so no, I gotta go. I gotta join you
Yeah.
first.
All right, great. And James, how are you?
I'm doing
Right.
great.
Okay, there we go. Great. And where are you from, James?
From Thailand.
Thailand. Great. Wonderful. All right, so we can get started with today's lesson. Today's lesson will be on behavioral interviewing. So it's behavioral interviewing 101. Interviewing, again, can be so intimidating for people. So it's really good practice to kind of know some of the concepts and things to do when it comes to an interview. There's a difference in traditional interviewing and behavioral interviewing. So let me share my screen with you guys so we can kind of go over those differences. All right, let me see here. Okay. All right. So, behavioral interviewing. First of all, does anyone know what behavioral interviewing is? Any ideas?
How do you express yourself into an interview?
Okay, so Vivian says how you express yourself during an interview. Anyone else have any other suggestions or feel the same way? You know, it's wow. You should not all speak at once. You really shouldn't. It's hard for me to understand when everyone's just talking. All right, let me that's no problem. That means that we may not know, which is great because now we can go over it. So, what is behavioral interviewing? All right, so behavioral interview is basically a way for employers to determine if the employee will be successful in this type of position. So what the main word that you want to look at here is behavior. Behavior. What the employee tries to determine is how the employee has done in previous positions. What type of behaviors has this employee exemplified or performed, basically, so that they can see if this person will be right for a particular position. So before I continue, I hear an echo. So please close your Verblin website and just keep Hangout up If you have Verblin up, close it. And if you're not wearing a microphone, wear one because it'll help with the echo. All right, so that's good. I'm not hearing it anymore. All right, the difference between traditional interviewing and behavioral interviewing is that with traditional, you can kind of get away with the easy questions, the most common questions asked, like, tell me about yourself, or tell me about your strengths, or tell me about your weaknesses. You know, those are traditional type interview questions. In traditional interviews, you can kind of cheat a little bit. You can, if let's say, for example, the employee says, how do you handle stress, or how did you handle this particular situation in the job? You can kind of make something up, and in certain instances, some people do that, and they kind of, as long as they presented it well, they may get the job. But with behavioral interviewing, it's a little harder to do that because once the employer asks you a question, they continue to probe and probe and probe about what you've done. So if you're not telling the truth about it, eventually it will show. All right, so let's go to the next. What's the point of behavioral interviewing? Well, obviously it helps for the employee to determine if your skills are great for that type of position. Vivian, read for me. What is the advantage to behavioral interviewing?
Allows the interviewer to gain detailed job-related examples, assess past performance, assess competencies, focus the interview so candidates provide more than just candid responses.
Great. So basically, when you are asked particular questions, specific questions, the main thing you want to do in a behavioral interview is give examples. So for example, if the employee says, how did you maximize retention at your school? Let's say if it's a position where you're going to work in a college. How did you increase retention? You know, then you want to give specific examples of what you did to increase retention in this type of interview. And then that interviewer will then determine how your past performance was and what your skills were based on your examples. Now, what do you think it means where it says, focus the interview so candidates provide more than just canned responses? What do you think that means by canned responses?
Responses that were prepared before.
There you go, exactly. Because we all can think of some great answers to certain questions like, what are your strengths, right? We can kind of have that already memorized. But this type of interview pretty much decreases the ability to memorize because you really don't know what type of questions that they're going to ask. So it minimizes that and really allows the employer to really see who you are. Okay. So then the question is, can you prepare for a behavior interview? Absolutely. It will even help you in a traditional interview. So here's a good thing you can do. Just as you would do for a traditional interview, you can kind of research some of the common interview questions that are asked that are behavioral. Looking at the particular job that you're going for, you can kind of determine what type of questions they may ask specifically that have to do with how you performed a certain task. But unfortunately, you can't always predict the questions that they're going to ask, but you can try to be as prepared as possible by thinking of some of those responses. Okay, so I want a volunteer to read this for me here, that you see up here.
I can.
Great, thank you.
The typical company determines skill set by doing our detailed analysis of the positions they are hiring for. It is helpful if you do this in preparations for the interview by asking yourself some questions such as, what are the necessary skills to do this job? What makes a success candidate? What would make an unsuccessful candidate? What is most difficult part of this job? This will help you to get a feel for what kinds of questions you may anticipate and what to include in your answers.
Thank you. All right. So basically, you need to, again, think of whatever position you're going for, think of these questions in your head. So let's think of a position. Anyone, just give me any type of career.
IT?
IT?
Yeah.
Information technology?
Yes.
All right, great. Okay, so let's think about it. If we're thinking about IT, okay, and we're going for an interview on IT, and we're thinking of there may be a possibility that this company may ask some behavioral questions. These are some of the things that you would want to think about knowing the field of IT. So let's think about it. And knowing IT, what it encompasses. What are the necessary skills to do this job? What are some of the necessary skills you think you would have to have in IT?
To be creative?
To be creative, absolutely. Okay, so we have one, to be creative. You definitely need to be creative in the field of IT. What else?
You need to be updated about technologies always.
There you go. Exactly. You need to technological advances, right? That's the term, technological advances, all the updates. What else? Anything else that you can think of? Clearly, you have to be detail oriented, right? Meaning you have to be able to pay close attention to details. Okay, in IT. Definitely have to do. And then obviously what? Good with computers, right?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so good. So that's something now you're thinking, and this is what you want to do when you're going on the interview, thinking of questions like this. So, in knowing all of this, what makes a successful candidate for IT? Some of the ones you already see, you can kind of think the same way. Somebody that's creative, someone who knows technological advances. Anything else?
To be a wise guy.
To be a wise guy. Give me an example. Like, what do you mean in terms of being a wise guy?
I mean, you need to know different things from different kind of technology.
Okay.
And you could talk about it, and maybe you could impress the interviewer.
Absolutely. Yes. Good job. When you said wise guy, it made me think of something differently because we have a term in English where you call someone a wise guy. That means you're saying that they're like like sarcastic, kind of a smart aleck. Yeah. It's like an idiom that we have. You're a wise guy. You think you're a wise guy, like that. So we say that. So when you're in more, I would say, maybe like very intelligent, and some of the examples that you mentioned were absolutely great. What would make an unsuccessful candidate?
April, may I add something?
Sure.
Can I say that a person who has good skills in English will be more successful because everything related to computers are pretty much in English.
Yes, that's a very good point. That's a very good point that I didn't even think about. Very good, yes. I would agree with that. What would make an unsuccessful candidate? What are some of the things that if a person possessed, it would not be good in this type of position in IT?
Be lazy man.
Say that again.
To be a lazy man.
Lazy. You said lazy.
Yep.
Well, yeah, you certainly can't be that. You certainly
You need
can't
to
be
be
that.
active, right? You need to be
Ve-
active.
Exactly. You have to be active. You have to definitely, like y'all said before, know something, definitely a lot of things about computers. So, and if you're a person that's, really slow in terms of picking things up, basically you should be a fast learner. So if you're not a fast learner, that may be an issue, right?
Sorry, April. Can
Mhm.
can can you post the link to
Yeah, I was
for the
actually, yeah,
PowerPoint?
I'm actually trying to do that. So just give me a minute on that one. I'm trying to pull it up for you guys while I'm talking. Okay. So I'll get it up in a second.
Thank
All
you.
right. So no problem. Last question. What is the most difficult part of this job, you think? What would be the most difficult part of it? Do you think it's a possibility that there are long hours involved in IT?
For me,
Yes.
the most difficult of this job is interact with the users because you have too many users
Okay.
and all the users are has different personalities.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yes. So that's definitely a good point. Anything else?
Watching a computer screen for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, how about that? Because I know my eyes get tired after a while, and I feel that I'm on the computer pretty much a lot as well, so I can definitely see that.
I think it's not a more difficult job because you can enjoy that job. You can meet with different peoples from different culture. You have fun, man.
Uh-huh. Yes, exactly. Very good. So that you guys are really starting to think now, and that's what you want to do before you're going on type of interview because you really don't know. You really don't know if the company that you're interviewing with are going to ask behavioral type questions. We're going to get into a minute what type of questions those would be. But yeah, so it's definitely something that you want to start thinking of and kind of like trying to prepare for as much as possible. I do know that when I was going for a job position, I had thought of basically a lot of interview questions. I think I have written down maybe 20 like traditional questions, 20 behavioral questions based on what I thought the employer may ask. Unfortunately, I went and they asked none of the questions that I had prepared, so that kind of sucked. But
Oh.
yeah, but it's still good to try to at least prepare with some of the ones you think just in case. So I just included a link for you guys there, so you should be able to access it. All right, so let's go to the next. Okay,
Ma'am, I
got it.
cannot see the link. I can't see the link.
You don't see it?
The link
Yeah,
which you
in the
sent.
chat, in the verbal in chat.
Can you here send me in group chat? Google chat. Okay, thanks,
Put
ma'am.
it, put it in the other
It's in
chat.
Google Chat. It's
Thanks,
already
Vivian.
there.
I got it.
You got it? All right. All right, there. All right. So let's go to the next. So basically, what you want to do is think like the employer. Think about it. If you were hiring for employees, what skills or qualities do you think whatever position this employee needs to have? So that's what you need to do. Okay, well, if I was the employer, would I hire this person if they had this particular skill, or they answered this particular question, or they had these particular behaviors in their old job? You know, that's what you want to think about as you are preparing. So let's now talk about preparing for a behavioral interview. Let's see. Forrester, can you read preparing for a behavioral interview?
Yes, preparing for behavioral interview. Examine your past work experience and be aware of what highlights your skill, attributes, and accomplishment. Practice your stories using real-life examples. Have specialties that focus on environment. Look over skill set and samples questions here and on suggested websites. Know your resume and know your resume and all your experience well. Be knowledgeable about the job you are applying for.
Perfect, thank you. So obviously, the first thing you want to do is, you're going, let's say, for a secretary position. So first you
Yes.
need to look at your resume and determine, okay, do I have any experience related to being a secretary? If you do, then you need to really highlight for yourself which ones would basically apply to this particular secretary position. You know, look at the job description. Pay close attention to the job description. Look at the keywords that are on the job description. That'll help you to determine, okay, if this job is saying that they want someone that has great customer service and very detail oriented, I need to highlight a time period or one of my work experiences where I was completely detail oriented, and I need to provide examples. Okay, you always want to provide examples in a behavioral interview. Other than that, the employer can't really get a good grasp in terms of how you would make out in this type of position. So always look for examples. Again, know your resume. You know, you don't want the employer to ask you something and you say the wrong thing. It wasn't on your resume or something different. So know your resume well. And last, being knowledgeable about the job you're applying for. Never go on an interview without researching the company. It's not a good idea. You want to know the company's mission,
Vision.
the vision, exactly. As much as you can. Obviously, you're not going to know everything, and you're not going to be there to write a dissertation about the company, but you do want to show the company that you are interested, and that's one way that you can do it, by knowing some things. Well, I noticed that your company is trying to improve admissions rate of your students, and I have particular experience in this because I blah 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 blah. So that kind of shows the employer that you've done your homework, because they're trying to increase their admissions rate. Okay, so think of things in that way when you are trying to prepare. All right, next. Okay, skills and desired behaviors that an employee may be looking for. Okay, so first block here on the left-hand side. Raul, can you read that for me? What are some of the skills? Read the bullets on the left-hand side for me.
Decision making and problem solving, leadership, motivation, communication, interpersonal skill, planning and organization, critical thinking. Sorry, I can't read more because it's fuzzy, the screen.
I'm sorry, the screen is. I'm sorry.
Fuzzy, like the letter. I can read the letters because
Oh,
it's
teamwork.
Blurred.
yeah,
Oh, it's blurry.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Vivian. Yes, the word is blurry. Okay, teamwork and ability to influence others were the last two. Okay, so somebody who can make decisions, can make proper decisions, good decisions, some of the things they look for. Someone who shows that they can lead, motivate the team, communicate well. And obviously, teamwork is really big in a lot of organizations because most of the time you are working on a team. A lot of times you work individually, but everyone at some point has to work on a team. Obviously, ability to influence others is important too, but influencing others obviously in a positive way, definitely not in a negative way. Okay, on the right
Fast.
hand side, yes, on the right hand side, can anyone read that for me? Brenda,
Yes, teacher.
what what are some of the skills that other skills that employers look for in these interviews? Right
The
on the right hand side, can you see it?
ah, do you want I read the?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. It's adaptability,
Mhm.
attention to detail, honesty, integrity, energy, in, independence, listening, organizational management, risk taking, work standards.
Okay, what do you think it means by work standards?
They follow the standards of the company,
Yes, exactly.
the,
What do you
the
think it means by
guidelines.
yes? What do you think it means by risk taking?
What?
Anybody? Risk taking. What do you guys think that it means when you say risk taking? Someone who is a
It,
risk taker.
it's mean
When
that
go ahead.
it's mean that if we cannot take a risk in the company for selling our goods or anything for else for investment, then we cannot gain profit. It's the rule of the marketing that if you cannot take risk, you cannot get more profit. Take risk, get more profit.
Mhm. Yes. So obviously you want someone that's not afraid of change and someone who is not afraid to take risks. Um also, you want to be careful that you don't have an employee that's taking a lot of risks that may be damaging to the company. So, risk
Yes.
taking, but great risk taking, and risk taking that involves heavy decision making is important. Okay, so these are some of the skills that they look for. And again, when you are relating these skills in your interview, you want to again show how by providing an example. So, Miguel,
Yeah.
tell me about a time that you showed great communication skills on your job.
Um, it could be, for example, if you're working in a project and the project has some deadlines and we are expecting or getting some delays. So in
Mhm.
that moment, you have to have good communication skill in order to communicate effectively
Mhm.
what is
Mhm.
happening.
Okay.
If done, you could get I don't know, maybe the boss could be angry with you because if you don't explain clearly, they could they could think that you are doing something wrong. Maybe you are wasting the time or I don't know something else.
Mhm. Okay. Um, is James in the room still?
I mean, I'm
Okay.
here.
James, tell me about a time that you influenced others at your job.
I influence others because when I work, I always like I don't know, I want to get the job done immediately, so I like kind of pressuring others at the same time. I don't know that it's a good thing or not, but yeah.
Okay. Okay. So in a behavior interview, you want to you want to get a little deeper into that question, give a specific example. So not just saying, sometimes I pressure others, but what did you do exactly? Did you give some type of incentive if somebody were to do something that you wanted to be done? You just want to dig a little deeper in terms of answering these questions. That's what behavioral interviewing is all about. But good. One more.
Yes,
Alsan,
ma'am.
tell me about a time that you show leadership skills.
I am not the employee of any company, so how can I explain that? Hello?
Yeah, you said say that again.
I said I am not working any company, so how
You're not.
can I
You're not.
explain?
Okay. Have you ever worked for a company before?
No, ma'am,
Okay.
not yet.
Okay. What about tell me about a time that you showed leadership skills maybe in school?
Uh, uh, can I explain it in sports?
In sports?
Yes.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. I am the captain of my cricket team in college. So at that time when my team is entering the ground, I uh, address them, all of them, that if you uh, if you will if you will lose, then ma'am, I cannot understand.
That's okay. That's why interviews can be so intimidating, right? Because you're kind of put on the spot, right?
Right. Yes.
So that is why it's important to view things like this. Think of some possible questions because it can be a little intimidating, definitely. But thank you for that.
April,
You were getting there, and what he was doing was he was providing a specific example. That's what you want to do. All right. Let's go to the next.
April, it's
Yes.
okay if in a situation like his, you never worked before, so you don't have a working experience. If you tell about your school or college or something like that, is it okay
Yes, you
or?
can. That is definitely okay. And employers will understand if you are, let's say you're fresh out of college, you just graduated from high school, you just graduated from college. Well, more than likely you probably didn't have a real full-time job. Maybe you had a part-time job, you could talk about that. A school job, you could talk about that. Maybe you were a part of some organizations in school and you provided some leadership there. You could talk about those things. Yes, you could definitely talk about school related even as he did with sports, if he has not had any job experience, but it still demonstrated that he had that quality that they're looking for. So yes. So let's look at some of the sample behavioral interview questions. These can be pretty hard sometimes, if you get these type of questions. So here's the first one. And if anyone can answer this, do so. Describe a time when you were faced with a stressful situation that demonstrated your coping skills. Now see how that one makes you really think? That's how these questions are. So anyone have a time when they were faced with a stressful situation?
April,
And
the
you're
time you take to answer the question is like something they use to judge you or something like that.
say it again, Viv?
The time you take to answer the question, is it one of the points that they judge?
Well, you know what? You obviously do not want to pause for an extremely long time, but it is okay to pause. It's okay to pause and gather your thoughts. You don't want to have the person looking at the clock like, when are you going to respond? But if you need some time to like just gather and think, because again, some of these questions are really hard and you have to think. You know, you can definitely take a minute to pause, and then unfortunately in interviews though, you kind of get that moment to pause, and then you kind of like in your mind say, okay, let me think, let's let it come to me, so so yeah, that's why those preparations are helpful.
Because I was actually thinking that if you answer too fast, maybe the person will think it's a lie because you just answer too fast. And if you take too long, then you're taking too long, and it's a bad thing.
That's a good point. With the asking too fast, I could see that being looked that way, and at the same time, some people are kind of faced with some of the same interview questions. So if you're a person that has been interviewing a lot, you may actually be able to answer something pretty quickly because you've kind of gotten used to that particular answer. So it does kind of depend. But some of these questions are that's what behavioral interviewing is all about. Questions that are a little more difficult, that you can't just blurt out the answer, because that's what the traditional interview is. It makes it so easy for someone to get a job very easily, because if you're a great liar, you can make yourself sound wonderful in a traditional interview. You could be the best person. You could have sold maybe like 1,000,000 products. That's what you told them in your sales job. You didn't, but you made it sound very good. So this is why a lot of employers are now going towards behavioral interview questions, because it kind of helps to deter that type of easy questioning and just fake answers. Here's another one. Tell me about a time when you had to use your persuasion skills to influence someone's opinion. Right? So that could be kind of tough too, to just kind of think of that right off the bat. Describe a situation when you were able to have a positive influence on the actions of others. So I think I did just initially ask that one. What have you done in the past to contribute toward a teamwork environment? Now that's a really good question. And again, it could be something that can stop you for a minute, but that might be more of an easier one to answer, because if you just think about different situations that you've been in terms of a team, you can start to think of some of the things you've done to contribute to a team. Let's see. Go to the next. Some more questions. Describe a recent unpopular decision you made and what the result was. And that one's really hard, right? Because if they're asking you about an unpopular decision, you're almost going to be afraid to say what that decision was, because you don't want it to work against you, right? Because you may be concerned that they say, well, you make unpopular decisions, so maybe we don't want you, right? But how you can kind of turn that one around is, you made an unpopular decision. However, you learned from it, and this is what you did the next time. And that way they kind of get to see that you are an honest person. Like, you are human, you make mistakes, but the important thing is not the mistake, but how you've learned from that mistake. Can I have someone read the next one?
Give me an example of a time when you had to keep from speaking or making a decision because you did not have enough information.
Okay, good. Katuska Fernandez, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, great. Can you read the next one?
Yes. All Okay.
You wanna start with how do you decide?
How do you decide what gets top priority when scheduling your time?
Great, thank you. So that's a good question. Forrester, how do you decide what gets top priority when scheduling your time?
Yeah, the deadline, the the, the deadline, the sooner the deadline is, the more the priority put. Do you
Okay.
know?
Okay, so so let's say for example you had 5 things that you had to accomplish at your job for the week. How would you determine which ones to do first?
The deadline is the same time. The deadline, I mean the deadline. In that case, uh, depends on the. I'm sorry. It
That's
depends.
okay. It's difficult to explain.
Maybe the easier one. I first do the easier one. Then
Okay. So you're thinking the easier ones is what you would do first, and you'll do the challenging ones later?
yes. Yeah, because challenging one is very it takes a long time, so
Mhm.
so I finish easier one very fast. Then let the boss to check the one. Then I take I do a difficult one. Then take a kind of long time. Then deal with it, and I do that.
Okay. All right. So thank you. So here is an example for me. I work as an academic advisor at a college outside of teaching for Verblin. And one thing I have to do is I get a list. I get a few different lists. I get a list of students who failed their classes and need to retake that class the next semester. I also get a list of students who failed their classes but do not have to take the class the next semester, but you have to take it the following semester. So in order to focus on what gets top priority, I obviously have to call the students who have failed the class and need to register for that class the exact next semester, right? That would be my type priority because they have to register for those classes immediately. Then, later on in the week, I'll call the other students that fail classes as well, but do not have to put it on immediately the next semester. You understand? So that's
Yes.
how I do. That's how I determine top priority for that particular situation. But good. Okay, describe an instance when you had to think on your feet and extricate yourself from a difficult situation. Now that can be pretty tough. If you're in an interview and you just have to answer a question like that, when you just had to think on your
What's the
feet.
meaning of extricate?
So basically, kind of get yourself out of that difficult situation is basically what it's saying. So that one really is something you have to really sit there and like really try to think about. So it can be pretty hard. So as you can see, some of these questions can be really tough. So you really don't know when you go in an interview. There could be a mixture of traditional interview questions and behavioral interview questions. So you really have to really, like I said, look at the job description, think of some of the possible questions that may be asked, and go from there. Let's look at tips for answering BI questions, behavioral interviews. Let's see. Who hasn't read? I think everybody did. All right, I'll get Brenda to read for me again. Tips for
I don't.
answering. Oh, you
Can I
didn't?
read? Can I
Juan,
read,
you
ma'am?
didn't?
Sorry?
Juan, do you say you didn't read?
No, I don't. I didn't.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Can I read, ma'am?
Who read, teacher?
Let Juan read this one.
Okay, perfect.
And with each question, ask think through what information is being sought and provide an example from your experience. Don't ramble. Take a moment to collect your thoughts and organize your answer before replying. Try not to say too often. The interviewer wants to know what you accomplished specifically. Use the STAR interviewing technique.
Yes. Okay, great. So, Vivian, that kind of answers your question a little bit. You can take a moment to collect your thoughts, right? And organize what you're going to say so that you sound very intelligent, that you know what you're talking about. You just obviously, again, don't want to wait too long. It say use the STAR interviewing technique. What is the STAR interviewing technique? I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you asked that because this is what it is. so, so this is a common strategy for preparing your interview and answering questions. So number one, you want to think of the situation. Describe the situation that you were in. Next, you focus on the task. Describe the task that you needed to accomplish. Then you want to describe the action you took. And lastly, you want to talk about the results. What did you accomplish or learn from that situation? So, for example, here's an example. The interviewer says, So, Brenda, tell me about a project you initiated. So Brenda says, well, during my internship last summer, I was responsible for managing ABC events. I noticed that attendance at these events had dropped by 30% over the past 3 years. So Brenda first talks about the situation. Great. Then Brenda says, well, what I did was I designed a new promotional packet to go out to the local community businesses. I collected feedback on our events, and I organized internal discussions to raise awareness. Wow, the employer says, because Brenda just completely
I'm gonna hire her.
Yeah, I'm going to hire her. She did a lot here for this situation. And the result was basically we utilized ideas from the community, made our internal systems more efficient and visible, and raised attendance by 18% the first year. Wow, Brenda, you are excellent. Okay, so that's an example of the STAR technique when you're trying to think of these questions. The situation, the task, the action that you took, and the result. Okay, that's the STAR technique. So you can actually kind of even think about it in terms of how you guys started joining Verblin. Okay, so the situation is, let's say the employer says, well, tell me how you learned English on Verblin. Vivian, what would be the situation?
The situation? Sorry, teacher, I did not get.
Okay, so let's say the employer is saying we're going to use the STAR technique. Let's say the employer said, well, how did you learn English on Verblin? Or how did you improve something in relation to Verblin? You know, so let's look at it. Think of ninjas. Okay, let's look at it that way. Think of ninjas. So what was the situation? Maybe the situation is that it was hard to join classes, right? Without them becoming full. So if that's the situation, what was your action?
We came early. Oh, sorry, I came. Damn.
Yeah, you're getting there. Exactly.
Started coming early for the classes so I could get the joy model before people who came late for it.
Exactly. So the situation was that it was very difficult getting into verbaling classes without them being extremely full. So this action is that she and a few other people came up with the idea of being ninjas. Ninjas being that they get in very early so that they can get in class before everyone else. And then Vivian, what was the result of this?
The ninjas were able to be on every class and they
There you
became
go.
famous.
There you go. And that was the result. So you see how she used the star technique there, and actually you can use the star technique in a lot of different scenarios. But this is exactly what you want to do when you are answering these particular questions.
Teacher, you
Okay?
use that to start technique?
Do I use it?
Yeah.
Absolutely, I do. When
Okay.
I am going for an interview, I really do everything that I've actually outlined here. I kind of first prepare for a few. First of all, I research the company heavily. I'll go on the internet. I'll look at the mission of the company, the vision of the company, everything that I can see, some of the possible issues with the company, just everything that I can get just to know as much as I can. Because one of the questions I notice a lot of times that are asked is, what do you know about this company and why do you want to work here? So that's a good way to kind of get into that because you've already researched. Then I think of, before the interview, I think of some common traditional interview questions that may be asked based on the position I'm going for. And then I think of some possible behavioral um, questions, and I kind of like just start to prepare for those and think about some of my responses. Like I said, unfortunately, one of my interviews, they didn't ask any of my questions that I had prepared for, but um, then when they're asking me a question, I certainly do talk about the situation. I talk about the action, and I talk about the results. Definitely, definitely.
And
So
you have
these,
some time
It's
to
very
think.
common on the US use that technique.
yes, a lot of people, but it's funny because some people do not um know that it may be called the star technique. They may not actually know the name of it, but a lot of times they use it without even knowing that's a particular name. Because after you start going to more and more interviews, you start to see that this is what the employers want. So you kind of start doing it. What have here is some extra information if any of you ever want to go to some of these sites just to learn a little bit more about behavioral interviewing. But it's definitely something that you guys want to look more into and start to get some practice with, because again, you never know what companies will start to implement some of these questions or ask you some of these questions. So, any other questions about interviewing in the last 2 minutes?
April, I was kind of I am reading a book, and the author of the book, he calls this, the list that you had us reading, um, like portable abilities, because you can use it in a lot of professional contexts. Like in every job, you need those same abilities,
Do you need
and
the
he calls
same
that,
in every job?
yes,
You
like
need this.
leadership, teamwork,
Oh
um,
yes, 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 exactly, exactly.
and
Unlike a lot. Go ahead.
the name of the book is working with emotional intelligence.
Oh,
With
and who's
what
the
you're
author
talking
again?
about. It's Daniel Goleman.
That is working with emotional intelligence. That sounds very good. Did you pick that up on your own, or someone referred you to that book?
Actually, my dad said I needed to read it.
Ah, very nice, very nice. And by the way, Viv, I saw that you have a book. You have a book specifically for Verblin, and I saw that and I thought it was nice, very nice, very nice.
I
You guys
will.
all should do that if you get a chance. Have a book specifically with Verblin information. So there you go. So as you are, let me make this big on the screen. Do put it up again, Viv.
Is a book
Yeah.
of
Mhm.
learning?
So as you are preparing and going to different classes, you can take some notes. It's very helpful. Um, do me a favor, you guys. Like me on Verblin, follow me on Verblin, and also check out my Verblin Facebook page, which is attached to the class description. You can give me some class suggestions or anything that you would like. But I hope you guys learned a lot about behavioral interviewing, and that is our time. And I wish you all a great day
Thank
or
you.
You too.
night.
Thank you.
Good night,
You
ma'am.
too.
Thank you. Good night. Vivian,
Good
you said
night.
something?
Yeah, do you remember when you taught us the word diligent?
Yes. You
You
remember.
said yes because you used me as an example. You said I was a diligent student.
Diligent
Student.
student, yes. And
Yeah,
then
and I
there
thought
you
of
go.
it.
Exactly. 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 She's a hard worker. She's very diligent. All right, you
What is
guys.
what is this, Viva? You have a copy of Verbling?
Okay, I'm going to have to end the broadcast. Let me end the class first. I'm sorry because it's over. And then you can talk to Viv a little bit. I just ended the class if you want to ask Vivian. You want to ask Vivian one more question? No? Yes? Okay. All right, you guys. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, ma'am. Bye.